Hello and welcome to the Fire in the Belly show. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Jacqui Taaffe. Good afternoon, Jacqui.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
Awesome. Listen, great to have you back on again. So you have been on before, but there's a very special reason to have you back on again today. And that special reason is a sort of a new birth of a new thing into your life, really, and it's your new book. So, Jacqui, first of all, welcome back to the show. Thank you for coming on again, and do please tell us about your book.
Yeah, so Pete, the last time you and I spoke was October.
There you go.
And it's incredible because we're now in June, and that's 6 months on, and yet so much has changed and evolved again. And yet, you and I sit here together and talk today, and yet I know that you sit in front of a very different Jacqui again. So it's like, it's amazing that the never-ending progression and evolving of human beings, in my opinion, and especially because I love to watch me, and I love to watch how I behave and some of the thoughts I have that might stop me from doing stuff. So it's fascinating. So just to say that, so back in October, I did slightly touch on this with you that I was launching the book, but we didn't get into it big time. And so I published it on the 18th of February. And it's called Inspire, Heal and Empower, as you can see. And this cover is a soul painting I got commissioned. And it just so complements the book because I call this book a soul piece of work. It's a very honest, raw piece of work. Some may be of the view that why would I have shared it? Why would I share my personal journal entries? Why would I share parts of my life, coping mechanisms that I've used? And the reason for that being is that I arrived last year and now in a place whereby I was ready to share the story, because by sharing the story, by shining a light on it, it's like a pressure cooker. I took the lid off and I stood into my own power again, and I got great freedom, and I got an infinite sense of well-being, and that even doesn't explain the peace and calm that I have from sharing it. And by sharing it, I know that if anybody reads this and has gone through a similar life event, which is an inappropriate, as I call it, medical examination in a hospital, I know they'll get something from this, because with the setting that's in, it causes great confusion, whereby if you're on the street and somebody comes up and assaults you, you know you're assaulted. But if you're in a medical setting and you're vulnerable, and you at that stage think that you're in a place of trust, and you're put in someone's care, and therefore you trust that they will act appropriately. So when someone presents themselves as a doctor and then insists on having an internal examination and then a breast check, and you know that it's wrong in your heart, but you don't question it because he says it has to be done, well, that causes much confusion, huge confusion actually, because the inner part of you is saying, this is wrong, there's something not right with this. And yet the outside, the external, he stands in his white coat, he stands professional, and so there's confusion, and it's something that's very important, I feel, has to be highlighted. So you spend, for me, years in confusion around, I know that wasn't right. And so it was very odd, but yet on reflection and looking back, it was also a great coping mechanism, because when you have doubt, well then maybe it was meant to happen. So that gave you some sort of peace of mind to continue. But the moment the doubt's removed, you then know what you always knew. So, the punchline of the book is it's a true story of finding your voice, breaking the silence, and trusting one's knowing. And that's what I did. Like the 15-year-old that I was a child, I was a minor when it happened, knew instinctively that it was wrong. And yet in that moment, we put it into a little corridor of our minds. We came back up and we set off with our own set of strategies. Looking back on me now, like whereby I was quite protective. I ended up luckily falling into a role where I was able to do an awful lot of advocacy work for people over the years. So I'm strong on that. If you're in trouble, if you need someone to support you, I am the woman to come and get. I'll back you up. And that was a skill I just stood into and naturally did. So I firmly believe that was part of what I took on in that moment. And as the years, like we're talking 37 years now, October the 23rd coming, this has happened. And since writing the book, since sharing it, the freedom I have got, just really, to put a word on it would insult it, to be perfectly honest. And so this book is for anybody who's had an inappropriate medical examination, or for anyone who doubts themselves, who lacks confidence to stand into who they truly are and to not follow their dreams. There's tools in this book. It takes you through what thoughts are, which is fascinating. Our beliefs, when we become aware of our belief systems, where we change, we're then in a different place and position to take charge of our lives in a completely different way. And when you know something, you can't unknow it. So as I say in the book, when you know better, you do better. And the tools that I have learned over the years with the coaching and the hypnotherapy has brought me to be able to do this, to share it, to be no longer ashamed of it. You know, I say in the book, page 64, shame, which is secretly hiding all meaningful emotions. So what shame did was, it made me hide me. It made me hide my voice. And it kept me just going and going and going. But the minute I let go of that shame and didn't hide what my dreams are, didn't hide that this happened to me. Why would I hide that this happened to me when in actual fact, I did nothing? This person came in, interrupted and interfered with me. And the minute I gave it back to him, and that's the tool I have, give it up and give it back. It's not mine to keep. And to think that I kept it silent for 36 years, to protect him, and it's incredible. But that's the journey I've come to, and that's the path I had to take. And there's a time when we share, there's a time when we're ready, and I firmly believe the time is now for me. So it's powerful stuff. But it is true that it is through my own training and my own self-reflection and watching me and questioning me, and also saying to me at times, I don't like that part of you, Jacqui. Where's that coming from? What's that about? Where's that? You know, so I love that. And I suppose the book itself too is a demonstration of myself under like analysis. And so I'm raw, it's vulnerable, and yeah, it's lovely. I love it.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating. And the one key thing that keeps coming out there, it's along the lines of violation of trust, right? You know, it's that, you know, as you say, well, one, obviously a minor, but two, it sort of happened where it kind of, it could have had good reason, but it didn't have good reason. And there's a violation and trust has been built, but actually been abused. So there's so many angles on this, right, as well. That's the crazy thing about it.
There is, and it's a topic actually. And you know, what's people would say, my husband would say to me the odd time, sure, how could that have been right to happen? You were gone in for an eye operation. Like, it was an eye operation I had gone in for. And as I said to him, the doctor that day, when he said, you know, when he pulled the curtains around the bed and said, you know, I have to do an internal. And I just said, I don't understand what that has to do with my eye. And his response was, well, it has to be done. So it's a topic not commonly talked about, the effects and the impact of a sexual assault in a medical session, whether that be in a hospital session, whether that be in a general practitioner setting, in a medical setting, in a setting whereby when an individual goes in and trusts the person in front of them, and that in itself, I think, needs to be highlighted around, you know, why is there not more talk around people this has happened to in this setting, the effects and the impact it had on them, because it's exactly the same. There's no difference in walking down the street and being attacked. There's no difference. In actual fact, there's an extra layer of confusion with it, because it's done by a person in a place of authority and respect. So we all have, and I talk about labels in the book, and we instantly, whether we intend to do it or not, we instantly arrive and with a definition and an idea of a person when we give them a label. Whether that's a doctor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a coach, life coach, we instantly, as I say these words, you are visualizing what that person's like. What would you expect from them? What behavior would you expect from them? And could you trust them? So it's an area which is not being explored enough and talked about enough. And I suppose the book is inviting that conversation. And the more people that come out and say that happened to me, and name it for what it is, or share it with somebody in trust in a position, not everybody has to do the book like I've done, but reach out and talk to whomever is in a position of trust that you need to talk to. That's what I would say, because the freedom which comes with that sharing just of it and saying it to somebody, it's powerful.
And really, I suppose in coming about, deciding to write the book and really, so the intention, I mean, did it follow one of the particular three headings you talk about, the inspire, the inspiring, the healing, the empowering side? I mean, was that the overall intention, to get those three, to empower yourself and to empower others? What was the intention?
The three are together, they come as one.
Okay.
So I inspire myself. I mean, there's no doubt that, if I look at this, and I don't do it very often, but I look and I go, wow, I've written a book. How did this happen? There was no intention of this being a book in 2019. If you'd said to me, Pete, in 2019, Jacqui, you'll have a book in 2021 and you'd be sitting talking to me about it, I'd have said to you, no, Pete, that's not going to happen, because that's not possible for me, with the thoughts that I had, the beliefs I had about myself, and where I sat with this situation, as in, who I had shared it with, and I hadn't shared it with many, and it wasn't. It's not a topic of conversation you have with a coffee over a friend every time. Jacqui, oh, did you see Jacqui? I met Jacqui again for coffee, and she's on about that again. Like, people don't want to listen to that. They want to. So it wasn't a topic of conversation. And it was in 2020 when we closed, the country kind of closed down. At that stage, I'd been journaling anyway, and I encourage anybody to journal, because the dynamic of what's within our heads, when we take it out and we write it down, totally changes the dynamic of it when you look at it and it's separate to yourself. It's a separate disassociation piece. It's powerful. And as I wrote the journal entries, and as time went on, I suppose it was mid-March, April, I kind of went, this is not just going to sit as a journal entry. Something instinctively within me said, no, this is a book. And, you saw some of that journey then. I that's where people align. That's when you find people who are meant to, you're meant to meet them at the time. And that's when I met Heather. So it was meant to be. There's, I do firmly believe it's meant to be. And when I launched this, we had a brilliant book launch. I think it was 70 people in the room, 100 had registered. And where from? I was like, these people were registering. I knew some of the lovely faces, and some of them were friends, but loads of people registered who I didn't know, and came and sat in that room, and I still don't know them. And my wish for it was then that I threw it out to the universe. I see hands catching it when I close my eyes. I can just see hands catching it, and my wish is that that they get something from it, and that it makes some change for them in their life. Because to think that you would go around blaming yourself for somebody else's that behavior, being silent in yourself and suppressing all your wonderful talents and gifts because you have a deep rooted belief that you're not good enough as a consequence of it, and that you're not powerful enough because of the consequence of it, because in that moment your power was taken. Like your right to say no was not heard or listened to, and was walked over actually and trampled on. So to think, you know, that a human being would sit with all those sad and negative feelings for themselves and not step into who they truly are. Well, if this book can shine a light for somebody and somebody can read it and say, well, I'm not that either. I'm not that. And make that decision and that shift and that choice the way I've done. Well, then this is what this book is meant to do. And it's meant to be shared. And it's going to be here when I'm gone. And in 100 years, if somebody goes into a medical setting and it happens to them, they might just read this book. So it's a powerful piece. What can I say? And it's inspiring. It's inspiring, you know, for a difficult subject and a difficult topic. It's inspiring. It's not negative. It's inspiring. It's around you. Taking it on, giving him no credit. The book's not about him, the perpetrator. The credit goes to the 15-year-old child who has, I've taken her hand, we've walked this together, and all credit goes to her. And these tools are for myself and for others to benefit, because he deserves zero focus or attention. And that in itself is powerful, because you don't give your energy to him. 2 minutes of my energy to him is a waste of my time.
And almost I suppose the consequence also, I mean, in all that time, I mean, it's essentially, you know, that all the time that has evolved since then as well, and all the energy that's been built up to it, and the doubt and the fear and the anxiety, and God knows what other energies and sort of fears and feelings you have with it. So it's not just the event. The event is actually a drop in the ocean of the consequence, really, isn't it? It's sort of.
Well, the event is the event. It's the impact. It's the consequences, or it's the things we take on after the event that then affect our lives and change our personalities to a certain extent. You know, so I was very conscious that I would be protective. I have a very protective mind of myself. You know, like I still wouldn't put myself in situations now. I would still, you know, not walk alone at night. You know, what I didn't realize looking back on this was that this is a direct consequence of this. But, you know, I wouldn't go off walking down a road at night, even with the dogs. Even now, I would not put myself in situations whereby I might find myself in a situation whereby I might get in difficulty. So, and when I drive, and my husband's not with me and my daughter, I lock my car doors. I don't. That is instinctively inbuilt when I go in. Now, it's some might say that is no way to live, but what it does is it's your protection mechanism to protect your environment, and so therefore, you know, you don't put yourself in situations where you feel, oh, I don't feel right about that. So it's that trust too, and that intuitive part of you that I allow to guide me. But what I love is with the protection part is I don't have to hide who I am anymore. I love, you know, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to cry. I'm okay to talk. I want to talk about this. And this is powerful for me. Then to go around going, no, I'm fine. No, everything's fine. Say, no, you know, keeping it pushed down. With expression comes freedom. With suppression comes depression. End of story.
I love that. And in terms of you actually processing and really, I suppose, trying to even just get it clear in your own head, I mean, is that something that came through the book as well, or is it something you had actually started to process yourself separately, and then this was a later reflection? I mean, how much was before and how much was during?
Oh, you're talking like in the book. It's really interesting. It's like 2013, I had started the journey of, you know, what they might call personal development or self-awareness. I had definitely woken up, right? As in, I've woken up. But in 2013, a lady here in Drogheda, who is the founder of Dignity for Patients, she came in to me because of the role that I had previously worked in. I was in a managerial role in the community sector, and I would second staff out to different projects. So she came in to me and to explain what they did and to see, you know, what sort of employees that they might need to support them in the work they did. And as she started to explain to me the dignity for patients and how, you know, patients had found themselves in hospital settings having examinations or whatever done on them that should not have happened, I simply just turned to her, and it's in the book. I so remember even the day in the office, and I just said, you know, I had one of them. And that was that. I didn't proceed with anything. She didn't kind of say, oh. And then probably about 6 to 8 weeks on, I rang her and I said, I'm not ringing you as me. I'm ringing you of the conversation that you had and what I said to you, and I want to speak to you. So I started that journey then with the Dignity for Patients in 13. I made a Garda or a police statement in 14 because I looked for my files under GDPR because I wanted to find the file that was signed off to say that this examination was official. But I knew in my heart, as I wrote for GDPR, that I would not find the official documentation to say internal and breast check was official. But the file arrived here. It was a wet, dark, murky day when it came. And I went through the file and I rang Bernadette and it wasn't in the file. So I made a guard statement and the guards went in, but because of lack of evidence, no signature, because documentation, sure, it wasn't official, that was fine. And it sits with the DPP, and that's okay. You know, that's where it sits until other evidence comes to light. And so I started that journey really, you know, as you say, that since 2013. And then in 2020, I wrote to the hospital directly and I asked them directly. I had gone in for an operation. I was 15. Should this have had happened to me? And they came back and they said, what you're alleging happened to you. No, that would not be part of the admittance process. That gave me great freedom because I knew, but to think that it took from 84 to 2020 to write direct to them. But that's the process. Everybody's process is different now. That was the process for me. That was the length of time. I wasn't ready. This is, I mean, even the book going public, all of this, some might say, wow, how does she, but it's part of the journey for this. The book has a bigger purpose.
How much do you think the event actually made or changed your values through time?
The event didn't change my values. I hate unfairness. I cannot stand unfairness. Honesty, just give it to me straight. And regardless of what the answer is, I accept it if it's given to me straight. Don't go off and say something else. Just give it to me straight. So those things, my values didn't change. What probably changed or what formed for a number of years was that protectiveness I had of me, you know, so I would show very few people the real me. So one might come across as a bit stern, but yet when I sat on a one-to-one basis with a lot of the staff that I had, that's when I just, you know, loved, because I could really be with them, and I got it. I got where they were at, and that never shifted in me. But this suited and booted, and very official looking, and I was this and that, and that was protection, so that no one could see that vulnerable me. But I don't need to wear that suit anymore, because that's not who I am, and it doesn't make me any better. I am who I am. I don't need to wear that protection.
I think that's super interesting what you've said there, and I suppose it could be a lot of people may take strength and guidance from that, so that actually that's the change in the energy. So the energy that you'd applied before that's, as you say, that suited and booted that character that had been formed, and the energy it took to do that, but that wasn't you. Whereas now you step forward and actually you've been able to repurpose that energy and strip away and get rid of that character. And I suppose the inspiration there maybe for people is that think, God, nothing's going to change, or what's the point? Well, I mean, you tell me, what can change?
See, with that comes freedom. Freedom, the absolute freedom is a word doesn't describe it. It's incredible, the peace. And the peace, the okay with it. I'm okay. It's okay. It's okay. Regardless of, some may not get this. Some will get it, some will love it, some will say, oh, but I'm okay with it, because this is my journey. This is the power of the journey, and infinite well-being is one of the best words, if I was to put on it, somewhat gold to describe it. That feeling of really stepping into who I truly am, saying it as it is, being okay to say, these are the thoughts that I had, and letting go of that, as somebody said when I rang them, because they made an observation about me whilst I was writing the book. So I rang her and I said to her, will you talk to me more about that? And I knew I probably frightened her, because I said to her, look, I'm not going to get offended. Believe me, I've gone beyond that anymore. I don't get offended. But can you tell me your observation of me, of the Jacqui now as opposed to the Jacqui you knew? Because she was a colleague. We've had interactions over the years in the work that we did, and it's in the book. And she said I was like a spring coil. And you watched how she said to me, because you never knew what kind of reaction you were going to get. So you can imagine that kind of, and all of a sudden that freedom. And then your energy goes to a totally different place, because I'm not protecting, and like, whoa, and off I go. So it's fascinating to watch people and why they do what they do and behaviours they do. It tells a lot in each and every one of us, which I love.
It's just, I suppose, as humans, isn't it? It's that thing, and I was trying to work back there. I mean, roughly, it's sort of almost nearly in a 7-year cycle. The fact that it was the guts of, give or take, 7 years since that initial sort of discussion with that lady about the dignity for parent or patients, and then almost roll forward the letter, roll forward the book, and then there's a cycle there going on. But also, do you get to a stage in your life, is it that you say enough is enough, or do you think, was there a synchronicity there? Or was that conversation meant to happen? I mean, where do you sit with all that in terms of why did it come to light when it did, or is it just coincidental?
No, I think there's a time. I truly believe that, and I think there's a time when, for me, I was ready, and this was the journey, and these were the steps, and I knew that last year that something quite significant was shifting in me, and the significant piece is the book, because it's significant. And I firmly believe that, and I don't know what's next, and I don't know what's going to come from it, and I haven't a clue, but the intention of it is good. The intention of it is to empower others, and that can only be good. So good can only return from it.
I like
And
that.
I know I'm mindful, please.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. Yeah, the intention of it was that, and it is to say to someone, you're not on your own, you're not alone. And this is how it is, and take from it the pieces that best works for them.
Yeah.
It would be unbearable, right, for me. And this is where I arrived at last year. It became unbearable to think that I would die and not shine a light on that situation. And so the choice was kind of, okay. And I remember my daughter saying to me, Mum, people will judge you, but they'll do that anyway. The most important thing is that you share that story. And she's 14.
It's that, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, who do you think this book will serve best?
This book serves people who have gone through a similar event like that, an examination, without a doubt, will serve them to read the book. They may decide not to take anything from it, but to read it might give them an insight, or they might see something mirrored that they do. Anyone who is young, who needs to be educated, I get into consent in the book, and no didn't work for me. As in, it didn't stop, he still proceeded. And, to make it a common conversation, to educate people, even though I said no, he persisted. So to look at that, and I have recommendations within the book, things that could be done that might make things even tighter for such an event to not happen. Even though we have come on, and it is 2021, in 1984, there was no chaperoning. You were just left in the hospital. Now that wouldn't happen. You would have somebody with you, and they'd be with you all the time. But it's about educating, and it's about educating people to say no if they feel instinctively that it's wrong, regardless of who's standing in front of them. Because that's an abuse of power. What happened to me, what he did, that's an abuse of a position to a child.
Do you have any concept of how common it was? Maybe I don't know if common's the right word, or do you think this was an ongoing thing? I mean, are we ever going to know? Is that almost the problem? When we may never know, that people may never think about it or come forward, or I don't know.
Well, in the book, I was in a semi-private room, and somebody was admitted not long after me, and he did it to her after he did it to me. So she had the same done to her. So I would imagine, the more I look and reflect, that in actual fact, he knew the reaction he would get from doing this from a minor, and that would be silence. Right? I also know now it was lunchtime, so he chose perfectly when people was off the floor. I know that now. So if it's a consequence that people are silent, I wonder how many they've there. And I would suggest, with the journey I've taken, to go straight and make a Garda statement or a police statement first, before you do anything else.
Why is that so critical, do you think?
In the process here in Ireland, it's much more important, or more for me, for you to go and have your police statement done than just to go straight to the second body, which is TUSL.
Mm.
And I mean, I have to say the guards are very considerate, and it was done very well, and the statement was taken, you know, so there was no, you're supported right through that. And I would encourage anybody, rather than going to TUSLA first and making that mandatory thing, if it is to report it and it goes into them, I would still say go to the guards first.
As you say, I mean, through that time, you would hope there's hopefully some of the I wouldn't say basic stuff, but some of the, as you say, the chaperoning, it's just maybe a different procedure, and you would hope that some of those opportunities have been closed off or removed. You know, and hopefully we have learned, and I'm sure we have, and you know, I would hope so. You know,
Well, one of my recommendations and suggestions is, and I know I'm conscious of it, and I was conscious even when I put it in the book, because it's more paperwork and more admin. And, you know, I don't know, at times, I don't know whether the amount of admin that is going on in this world now is so important. I think more attention should be going on the focus of working with individuals and the paperwork, right? So, but I was very mindful of the recommendation, because it is an extra layer of paperwork. But I believe that everybody who's in a hospital should be given a document when they're being discharged, an evaluation. And they have the right to fill in that evaluation either there or when they go home. And if you had that, you would be in a position, because you'd be freer when you went home after the hospital with some sort of experience, to fill in your form and get it in. And I think that would really tighten things up.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it, how, you know, do you think it's the scale of maybe sort of institutions such as hospitals and that actually maybe some of it gets lost, or, you know, whereas if it was in a different industry, a smaller industry, a private industry, maybe it wouldn't be as I don't want to say as vulnerable, but do you think, I mean, there'd be less opportunity? I don't know.
I don't know. If somebody has an intention to do something like that, they have an intention to do so. It would be my feelings that this I was not the first. I certainly wasn't the last. And I just happened to be in the bed at the wrong time. I've said that in the book. So, you know, to give any energy to whether he'll ever be found is one thing, but by writing the book, maybe people will see themselves in this book. And we need to reach them. They need to read the book.
I mean, how, in terms of actually the person being found or whatever, is that something that's ongoing, or do you think that's maybe not just possible, or where do you sit?
Well, we don't have a named perpetrator, so it's going nowhere at the minute. But I'd imagine that he's about 62 now, so he could be still practicing. He could. And it was children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, in terms of, I suppose, your own journey there and really getting your own power, and you talked about earlier about being, you know, really sort of, you know, being the advocates, you know, the advocate for people as well, to be the, you know, the person that will fight your corner. I mean, When did that come into play for you? That sort of going from, I suppose, the shame and everything else that you'd mentioned about from the event, but then ultimately getting over that and actually starting to actually use that energy. I mean, when did that come into play for you?
So I always carried the shame. So the shame hit the vulnerable part of me, very soft part of me, the part that openly now talks with you today and talks to everybody now. I interact with them very open. I've got nothing to hide. The advocacy part, literally within probably that first year, then after that happened, that kicked in. I look back now on the roles I've done and things I've done, and that was instinctive. And that's where that fairness comes in, and transparency and honesty. This is why I'm like, oh, I just really be open, be honest, and be transparent about it. Don't say one thing and do another. Don't say it and then do a behavior that's totally contradiction to what you've just said. You either are or you're not. And so I stood into that role, and it's only as you look back and you reflect, like I would be a nightmare for anybody when I was admitted to a hospital, since nobody would like me as their patient and husband, because it is not a good situation. I question everything. Why is that being done? No, you're not doing that. I just will, and I'd say people would look, the nurses or whatever, or doctors would look at me and go, why is she? That's what, as a consequence of what happened. I just don't go in, and I don't trust. I want to know, I want it to explain to me. And I do that for others. And, my own sister's not well. So I would do an advocacy role for her this year when she's admitted and she has to be hospitalized. And I'd go in and I'd say, no, give us, and tell her and speak to her rather than over her, because she's not well. And then the role I did in the centre, there was so many over the years I helped, and I just love that role. I love to be able to help somebody if they're in a situation and they haven't the confidence to ask the question or to stand up for themselves, well, then I'll ask it. And that's okay, because it's for them. And I mean, we're all human beings. Strip us back, we're all the same, Pete. We all want the same things at the end of the day. We want to feel we belong, we want respect, and we want to be loved. And and if we're not respected and we're walked over and we're not listened to, that's just not on.
Just as you say that, I suppose it's that violation of trust, that sort of disrespect. There's so much through that event, and how our core fundamental beliefs are, can be violated. I think it's, violated is probably the best and strongest word you can use there. It's without permission. It's so much, and just the consequence, I suppose, for anyone out there, just really realizing how much of a consequence it can have, and I think the fact of, how much time has passed, before eventually, really sort of, I'm not saying, growing the strength. I don't know whether, that turning point of you saying, listen, enough, as you say, carrying the shame, carrying all that with you until eventually you go, enough, or you see a path, or you inspire, that lady's inspired you to come forward, and how that ripple in the pond will continue.
Yeah, and it comes down to the self-awareness piece, and really getting to know me and getting to understand me and understand how I work. And that's, I say it again in the book, when you become an authority on yourself, that's when you step into your own power. Like, self-knowledge is self-empowerment. You don't go off and buy confidence. It's not on the shelf. It's within each and every one of us. And for whatever reason or set of circumstances, some people feel they don't have confidence. They do. It's just been covered up through a set of circumstances, a set of conditions, a set of something that's gone and pushed it down. So I love to peel it back. And as we peel it back and we work through our stuff, wow, peace arrives. Peace arrives. It doesn't mean I don't have challenges in life at the minute. It doesn't mean I don't have stuff going on. But what I can have is I can go find peace, even in the challenging times. And everyone, each and every one of us deserve peace of mind.
Absolutely.
It's a right. It's a right we should all have.
Do you have any concept of where this could go and what potential it has and opportunities it may unfold?
Well, I didn't write it, funny enough, and that's not blocking the language. I didn't write it for the opportunities that might unfold. I wrote it to empower and heal and inspire people. So I'm hoping it's going to reach people who are in prime positions to promote this book and get it out there to as many, because it is a brilliant book. It's a soul piece. And it needs to get out there. And it needs to be, promoted, and it needs to reach whoever who will have influence to push it out there, because it is a genuine message to anybody who's suffering, going around feeling that they're not good enough, feeling that, no, I couldn't do that because somebody else would be much better at that than me. All this stuff, all this clutter that we have going on constantly in our heads. And, the toolkit will even start you to think about the thoughts, to challenge those thoughts, because it's powerful when and you know this, we only get it when we experience it. So I could talk all day long and I could try and sell this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but if you don't go away, try it, and at some point experience it, well, then it doesn't work. So when you experience it, that's it, because you're only going in one direction now, and that's going forward. You are no longer where you were. You've took a leap. And once you take that leap, well, then the momentum starts to boom, 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 and it's like dominoes, boom, 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 boom. They start to flip. And that's what happened for me. And so some of the tools in the toolkit are the starting foundation, maybe for somebody who hasn't explored this and look at this. And I wrote a blog on this, you are not your thoughts. When I really got that, I went, hold on here. I'm not stupid. Now, some might say, wow, she was stupid, and Jacqui looks confident, and blah, blah, blah. Don't judge a book by the cover. You don't know what's going on behind any of our faces. Somebody can look fantastic. So we haven't a clue what is going on. And when I got, I wasn't stupid. It doesn't mean I don't take effort to do stuff. That's not what I'm saying. But when I got that I wasn't stupid and that I did matter, just because of that event that made me feel I didn't matter, I did matter. And I'm telling people it mattered, what happened to me, or what happened to anybody else. Or you matter. What you do matters. You have an impact and effect on everything. So we have to be our own greatest advocates, Pete. No one's going to write this book for me. Nobody's going to sell this book. I have to sell the book, and I have to say to you, you are your greatest advocate. I am mine. Nobody's going to come in and do this for me. I had to do it. I had to share the story in the hope that I will help others by sharing it, because I don't think anybody's written a book on such a topic.
So powerful, it really is. So powerful. And obviously, so I mean, you mentioned there you're a hypnotherapist and you're a coach. That's fundamentally what you do. Are you finding? Do you find a connection and the tools that you mentioned that really you sort of pull out in the book and the tools that you use for coaching? I mean, are they connected to each other? Is it something that people can use?
Absolutely, and I just love. They're so powerful, and they're transformative if we put in the time and we put in the effort and we just practice it. Or do you know what? If we get curious, say I'm going to try it. You know, and if you try it and you try it, sure, look, I mean, it works. What can I say? I mean, I would not be doing this. I would not have written this book if I did not take on board the tools and techniques that I have come to know and learn and experience and the benefits of it for your own mental health and your own well-being. It's mind-blowing. It's underestimated and undervalued what we do as coaches, as hypnotherapists. It's one of the hardest things to package what we do, and yet we do incredible transformational work. And I love that. I love that I can be part of that process, that I can sit with someone in a very intimate, trusting conversation and provide a space for them to make the transformation that they want for themselves, for their lives. And that is just for me what it's all about, because I see myself, I suppose, in every client I work with, I see myself. I've walked that path, I've done that journey, and I love it. I love it.
I kind of have this picture of almost this iceberg. I mean, I suppose for you and maybe for your clients, I mean, people sort of I'm not saying brush off events like these, but certain things they underplay, saying, how significant, how much of a energy block or how much of a consequence they've had in their lives. Well, yeah, that's just what it was, or that's what, at the time, or maybe it happened, maybe it did. All these things, how often do we underplay, or how often do we not realize the consequential impact on everything else in our life? Is that something you see quite often?
Well, this is one I used all the time, right? What happened to me didn't matter because it only happened once. Now think about that. Just think about that statement. Imagine if I was to turn around to my friend or to you and to say to you, if this had happened to you, Pete, sure, Pete, it only happened once. Wow. So, and I see that now, and I look even now and go, it didn't matter. It doesn't matter. What all our journeys are quite different. Our lives are quite different. Things happen. But if something happens, it happens. And it has a consequence and it has implications. And it is of equal value, whether it happens once or happens 100 times, because it's unique to the individual. But that was really common for me, as in, oh, sure, it only happened once. That was a coping mechanism as well. Why am I feeling that horrible, violated, filthy feeling? And yet it only happened once, so there's the contradictions within how the mind plays to cope or to deal with stuff. And that's where you become aware of this stuff. And I go, hold on here, this happened, end of story. And it shouldn't have happened. And it mattered to me. So it matters. And I matter.
As you speak there, I mean, what's sort of almost the stages of grief, I suppose, come into play. It's, it's the denial, it's the anger, it's really, bargaining, depression, until you eventually get to the point. I mean, what comes across and what I'm sort of picking up is it's an acceptance. It's not saying it's okay, but there's an acceptance that actually you can then turn the energy to good use. You can let it flow. You're not, as you say, the uptight businesswoman. I can't remember your exact wording, but that, the face that you've created to interact with the world versus who you were. And, and now that's all been stripped away and you're back to who you are today. you know, and that's what comes across as those stages of denial, but
Mm.
actually
It's
you've
interesting, isn't it? And yeah, you're right. It's yeah, it is, and it's like the segment in Freud, isn't it? Whereby when we have a loss or a grief, we take out a segment and put them back in, and it's stages. It's the different stages and levels, and to me, an awareness, a really clear awareness of what happened, what belonged to me, what I needed to give back, and none of it belonged. None of it. To think. And that goes for a lot of people out there that's sitting holding stuff on. Someone else came into the environment and interfered with you. So I gave it back. And it's powerful stuff.
Talk to us briefly about that sort of giving back part, because I mean, that in itself seems quite key.
Well, I don't give any attention to that person, as I said to you earlier, and it's in the strands of the book. The book was not written for him. The book was written for me and the readers, so that people could see maybe themselves in my book, in the pages of my book, and hopefully take something from it that would inspire, heal, and empower them. And if I was to give him any chapter, would be to give him some form of credit, when in actual fact, all the credit goes to my 15-year-old self. He never let me give up on the fact that this is wrong. It wasn't constant, you know, but every so often over the years, it would come back up and you just hear it. What happened to you was wrong. And it just became so much louder in the last 8 years. And last year, it just was constant. It was, no, I've got to do this. You have to do this. I was being guided. And I always think and to me, that's why it's significant and why the book is beautiful. And within the book, I've got poems. I've written poems, and you see a picture of me at 15, my 15-year-old self. And then you see me when I'm small, when I fell down the stairs. That's how I ended up with a cast in my eye. My eye would roll in, and I had my little self in it back then. I'm trying to get the picture of me in it, and I've written poems, and yeah, it's a beautiful piece. You know that when you write something and you love it so much, and I encourage everybody else not to write a book if they don't want, but I encourage them to journal. I encourage them to come to a place whereby to talk to somebody who will be there to listen to them. You're not alone. The freedom and the weight that lifts from that expression. Powerful. As I say, dare to express, not suppress.
Finally, there, I mean, talk to us about the cover. I mean, the vibrancy of the color on the front cover
Yeah,
is
I love
spectacular.
it too. Yeah, and it's incredible, really, because it's a lotus flower. And as you know, the lotus flower goes deep down into the swamp at night, into black and green, gunky, slimy stuff, and appears and rises every morning. Beautiful, clean and pure and petals. And when I asked for my painting to be commissioned by Breda Marin, who's the sole artist, Breda went off and came back with this. But within the pages of my book, I make references to this swamp figure. Now, I did not know that my cover would be a lotus at the time, right? So that feeling and residue of that moment and those awful feelings that I took on from him that day, I got someone to create an image of that for people. I thought that would be very powerful for them to see what I felt. And I call him the swamp-like figure. And so that's the feelings in an image. And yeah, and everything complements what it all just came together as it's naturally meant to come together. It's a meant to be book. Do you want me to read you a poem?
Please, that'd be lovely.
This is the last poem in the book. Okay. I must be obedient to the callings of my soul. To be my truest self, to find calm, fulfillment, and peace of mind, I must listen to and be obedient to the callings of my soul. To be whole, to find my true meaning, I must listen to and be obedient to my soul. For if I am not to listen, I will only be a shadow of myself. I must listen to and be obedient to the callings of my soul, to the callings of my truth, to who I am, to what I am, and to what I am here to do. I must rise above my fears, worries, and doubts, to be able to go to that safe place within me that has everything I need. I must listen to and be obedient to the callings of my soul. I must be obedient and trust the callings of myself. Yes, I choose to be obedient and to listen to the callings of my very soul. So at last, I have found myself truly at home. Oh, I love that. That's mine.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's one of my poems.
Where do you think this is going to go? What's in the future for Jacqui? Do you think what inspires you, and what else would you like to do?
Well, I want to empower people to just do whatever they want to do, to stand into who they truly are, stop doubting themselves, and to go follow their dreams. We only get one shot. We only get one go. And how wonderful it would be not to look back and regret. Say, I did that. I tried that. And you know what? If it didn't work out, that was just a lesson. There was a lesson in that.
Yeah.
And move on. And for the book to reach as many people as possible. That is my dream. And to see it in shops, and to see it on TV and Oprah. Like the one she launched in April, what happened to me? This was launched in February, and that's what happened to me. So it's like when I saw the launch of the book and the trauma they were covering, I went, wow, So that would be the dream, the idea. And I love to get people's feedback from what they got from the book. And so I'm really privileged when people share with me what they got from the book, and it's very different for others. And what I love is that people are seeing themselves in different scenarios, tolerating and accepting situations which they shouldn't from it. So somebody was in a work situation and she said, I'm going to say no more often now. And that's what she got from the book. And I love that. And then somebody mentioned to me, wow, she started to question herself around, well, what was she saying yes to all the time instead of taking, sometimes when she just didn't want to say yes and she wanted to, so she said, I'm going to say no a little more often. And I love that people could see within that pieces of it for themselves. And that's what it's about, for you to find your piece and to say, wow, yeah, that resonates with me and I'm going to try that.
Fantastic. I love it. So the book is available now. It's on Amazon. I assume that's the best place to go for people, is it?
Yeah, there's the link. If you want me to send it on to you, the link is jacqui.com/inspire, heal, empower. And it's Amazon. Yeah, it's great. It's in the UK, Australia, France, Germany, everywhere. And you can just buy it there. And super.
I love it. So the full title for people is Inspire, Heal, and Empower.
Yes.
A true story of finding your voice, breaking the silence, and trusting one's knowing. So anyone that's on there, and just as well so people know, so the spelling of your name, just if anyone's searching by author, so it's Jacqui, Jacqui Taaffe. So just people, so very clear where to go. And it's Jacqui Taaffe.com is your coaching website, and also where the book's available as well. So just to really have people there. what final message would you like to leave with people, Jacqui? And what do you want people to get?
Trust your intuition. If you're being guided and you know it's not for you, trust your guidance. Trust that intuition. And if you're being guided to do something, do it. Because it's in the resistance and not doing it, you'll find your unhappiness. So follow your intuition. It'll bring you to your bliss. And you are your greatest advocate.
That is inspiring. Jacqui, thank you so much for coming on, sharing. It's been beautiful to have you on, and I love to see, and especially as you say, in such a relatively short period of time for you to have done this. So yeah, I look forward to seeing as well what the future holds. So thank you again. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Pete, thank you so much for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you.